All right, everyone. Okay, here we are. This is Campfire Stories Day 2. We should have done just one day. I'm exhausted. But here we are. We got Day 2, and we're going to have an awesome time. Today, we are again shooting from the Aurora Punk studio. Actually, we were just discussing right nearby where Odd lives. But we're not going to be in the
Yeah.
same room because that's not, that's not how we do things.
Now this is it's a stone's throw away, but it's still pretty damn close, I gotta say.
Yeah. Um, so real quick about Aurora Punks, they've been really nice to let us use their space here, and they're an independent publisher here in Stockholm, and they're very passionate about the local indie scene in Sweden. Also, they're creative people that like to create a space for creatives to come together, and that's kind of what their studio is about. So a shout out to them. They're very much in line with kind of what we're doing here with Vast Vision. Sitting here with me now is Ahlgren, who we worked together at Liquid Swords. We sat in rooms and just bullshitted all day long. It was awesome. But Odd, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're about, why you're alive? Just
Yeah,
let us know.
yeah. Okay, so we're talking about we're going to be talking about creativity and
Yeah,
working with
storytelling.
creativity,
Yeah.
storytelling, and stuff like that. So I'll kind of wedge it in that direction. Okay, so I'm from Stockholm City, where we are
Mhm.
right now,
Yep.
and just grew up here in the '80s, '70s, and '80s, and I was, as a kid, always like super into comic books and role-playing games and stuff like that. But I never realized that you could do that stuff for a living. And
Like most
I
people.
just I had a conversation with my fiance just the other day, like what kind of a kid I was.
Hmm.
I was a kid with I had no outlook on life. I had no dreams or aspirations or anything. Yeah, I wanted to be in a punk band that I was when I
Right.
was, 16, 17 years old. And then I'm still in that band on and off, but
Right.
which is cool. And I've been in many other different types of bands. So yeah, I wanted to be a musician, but I didn't realize you could work creating stories,
Hmm.
even though I always constantly did it, just to amuse myself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the late '90s where I got into contact with a guy at a party. It was like a barbecue, impromptu kind of punk, heavy metal, death metal guys. All of us guys were hanging out together, had a barbecue, and I started talking to this dude. He worked at Target Games, they were called at the time. They were the ones who made the Swedish equivalent of Dungeons and Dragons called Drakar och Demoner.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
They just re-released
and
that last year, didn't they? Like a big.
yeah,
Yeah.
not they, but another
Another
group
company.
owns
Yeah.
the rights to work with it, and
Yeah.
it has been yeah, it's been in circulation a lot.
Yeah.
And they had that game that was a role playing game, fantasy role playing game. And then they had a sort of Swedish version of, I guess, Gamma World, which was called Mutant.
Right.
And
I didn't make that connection that these were all not kind of knockoffs.
huh?
That they were all kind of a little bit of a knockoff of.
Yeah, me neither. I don't. I didn't get it then, but
Yeah.
you can kind of see clearly the inspiration.
Yeah.
So Mutant was that was a game that was the game that struck home with me because I was always into sort of
Mm.
dystopian
Yeah.
futuristic post-apocalyptic worlds and
Right.
stuff like that. Even as a kid, I guess it had to do with growing up in the '80s in Sweden, adjacent to Russia, Cold War. The constant, it wasn't for us. It was never, even though we had a good time all the time as a kids. We grew up in a very stable
Yeah.
civilization as Sweden. It was a good place, but it wasn't a matter of if there would be an atomic nuclear war. It was just
Mm.
when.
Even
But you kind
as a
of dealt
kid,
with
you felt
that.
that
But
way.
yeah, it was just like it's gonna happen, but I don't know
Wow.
when it's gonna happen.
Hmm.
You're thinking, well, one side of your mind is thinking that, the other side of your mind is like, what am I gonna do when I grow up? It's a weird, but that I think that's what made it so fascinating with
Yeah.
all the post-apocalyptic ideas and scenarios. So the mutant thing was really big for me. So I talked to this guy at least at this party, and he worked for them. Uh, Michael Stenmark is his name, and he used to work for them writing different types of like modules and scenario, stuff like that
Yeah.
for them for the various games that they were doing at the time. And I'm like, what stop. Do you mean you work creating all this cool shit? And you just dream up cool shit. What you dream up, like what, mutated spiders, how they treat their children? Is that what? Yeah, it's like, that's my work, that's my job. You're like, okay, so demonic possession, yeah, exactly, I'm into that. And we started talking about stuff that was like obscure movies and stuff like that, and we realized that we were very similar, but I had no idea you could do that for a living. So I kind of latched on to him, and he introduced me a little bit to that world, which was that world was very small at the time. And then a few years later, I got my first sort of gig working at Target Games to help them create their first video game, I guess. It was like a isometric view, top down kind of point and click adventure in the world of Drakar Demoner, which was like in '98. I think it was released in English under the name of Dragonfire.
Wow.
It was their first digital effort, I think. But then shortly thereafter, Target Games folded for many different reasons, and I'm not privy to them actually, but they folded, and my world was just coming apart because I didn't know what to do. But then I already knew other people in the business, so I could continue working in another company and then another company. But it was just like, it was very, the companies just folded all the time back in those days.
Yeah. So how old were you at this point?
I guess, not good with math, but I was maybe 27, something like that.
In 20s, yeah.
Something like that. It was like 98, 99.
Yeah.
And then when I got into it, and then I realized that I had this, like, having grown up with all these, I was into this British comic book called 2000 AD.
Right. Yeah.
That was my sort of my childhood. I was completely obsessed with this comic book, and I read that more than I ever read Marvel or any American stuff. I was so into this 2000 AD, and that they had a very sort of dark humor and cynicism, and this post-apocalyptic kind of bleak scenarios all around, and but told with sort of a dry wit, if you will.
Yeah.
And I love the shit out of that comic, and we had a lot of, my parents had a lot of friends in the UK, so I kind of went to the UK a lot when I was a kid, and I got in contact with this comic book, and I got to say, I think that was one of those things that got me into it, and I brought the ideas and the things that I had grown up with from 2000 AD and other things into what I then started doing as a writer for video games, I guess.
Yeah. So how did you get introduced to 2000? Was it just a random, like you got it in a shop here? Because I've talked to a lot of guys who are into comics here in Sweden, and I know that the Marvel and DC stuff, just that wasn't a thing here. It was very much like either like, I guess it was like if it was Swedish, it was a lot of political cartoons or comics, and then but then it was very much like stuff like you're talking about 2080. So how did you get hooked up with that?
I think they started publishing, like a Swedish publisher began publishing Judge Dredd, which was he was one of the big sellers of 2080.
Yeah, right.
And he started publishing it. I think it was, Jesus Christ, it's a long time ago, but I think it was IPC Comics out of the UK. They started publishing it. They started publishing Judge Dredd for an American audience in the 80s as a standalone feature and colorized versions of it.
Yeah.
And those were the ones that were published in Sweden. So it was Judge Dredd, the comic book. And then now I would have, and I thought it was an American comic book because, all the American flags and the eagles and stuff like that. So as a kid, I'm like, yeah, it's American.
You got to put it on everything.
Yeah, exactly. And then I loved that comic book, and I was totally crazy about it. And then I realized that this came from the UK because I was there a lot when I was a kid, and then I
Mhm.
found this 2080. It was a very strange looking type of comic book. It was a weekly, and it was printed on this kind of newspaper
Yeah.
paper, like this. It was kind of, yeah. It was printed on a very sort of throwaway type pulp, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas the comic books that we were used to were like glossy covers and
Right.
colorized and everything. This was black and white, only color on the cover, and then it was. I don't think it was. They were never designed to become parts of a collection, you
Right.
know. And when I realized that this 2080 was the world that Judge Dredd came from, then I'm like, then I was on. I was
Yeah.
I was in for the ride, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And
Interesting.
but you didn't find we didn't have many comics like the
Right.
Danes for instance, in Denmark they have a great connection to European,
Yeah.
like Belgian, Italian,
Yeah.
French comic book and publishers, and they translate a lot of them
Hmm.
and have them laying around. They have a long, strong tradition of like adult comics,
Yeah.
not adult as in a triple X,
Right.
but adult as in adult.
Grown
Uh,
up adult, like
Grown up
grown.
shit,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we really didn't have that to the same extent in Sweden. And all of these sort of adult comics that were published in Sweden, they were a little painted with that kind of triple X brush because
Really.
they like to publish. It was just one publisher really who did it, and he liked to publish a lot of American underground comics and stuff from the '60s and kind of mix it up with a lot of, raunchy stuff. So it was like this really, it could be these really serious adult themed comics,
Yeah.
and it was always in the form of almost like an anthology. So it was like a bunch of different things running together in the same
Right.
within the same pages, and then so it could be like, I guess some French existentialists about some fucking private detective who's not dead, but he's dead and he doesn't know it yet, or whatever. And then it's like the next comics, like these fucking bikers, fucking dinosaur together,
Yeah, it's funny, man, because I didn't grow up with comics, man. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Canada, and I didn't get into them until I was probably my late 20s. But then very shortly, I started writing them because I just found it such an interesting,
Yeah, really.
medium. It's such a quick, like, there is something about this. There's not many people involved. It's really raw. It's really authentic, and I mean, I find myself years now, even later, after taking a break, of coming back to it again. I actually even like working together. A lot of the stuff that we were talking about had that very kind of pulpy comic book vibe, which I think that kind of put me
Yeah.
back into that mind space. But so you grew up with these comics, and I mean, I've had a lot of opportunities to talk to you. You're full of the most insane stories and knowledge about the weirdest things. Where did that fascination with kind of the obscure and the arcane and the kind of the wild side of human nature, where was that born, do you think, for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good, I don't really know, but I think it's just that I'm kind of kid at heart a little
Mm.
bit. So all kids are like into knights, vampires,
Yeah, yeah,
fucking torture chambers, and plague. Like kids are into that medieval stuff,
yeah,
and you like wizards, and you like soldiers, and you're
yeah,
in the adventure,
yeah,
and you like exotic cultures. You like voodoo. You just like the word. When you hear the word voodoo, you just like, I like that. Uh, you like mummies. Everybody likes mummy. If
right.
it's alive, it's even a living mummy. That's like the best thing in the world. You like Frankenstein. It's built from other humans, and they, you know, and you're into that as a kid. But most people just stop digging it for after a
Mm.
while. But if you stick with that sensibility of
Right.
liking the bizarre and the shit that got you going as a kid.
Mm.
You stick with it as an adult, you're gonna end up in places where those things are real
Hmm.
and not just made, like not just the product of somebody's imagination. That
Yeah.
actually things like this has happened, and that's when I started to realize like human history is wilder
Oh yeah.
than prose. I mean, you can come up with all sorts of stuff. I can write a book about some, like even fantasy and sci-fi, and then you look at something that's actually happened, but it's so weird that nobody touches it,
Right.
and you realize that this is if I would make this up, people would go, that doesn't make any sense. You
Yeah.
have to start over because that's too weird.
Yeah.
That's just it's too happenstance.
Yeah.
When you're writing a story and someone is like, isn't that pretty convenient though? That this guy would show up in the jungle and just save him. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. How big is that jungle?
Right.
It's like, but it's happened. It fucking happened,
Yeah.
man.
That stuff does happen. That's funny. Did you find that growing up here? First of all, I feel coming here now, it's rare to meet somebody who actually grew up in Stockholm. I think you're the one person, and
Yeah,
not only that, but yeah, like I feel like you're such a product because you grew up in Sodermalm, right? Which is
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, so you're also kind of a product of that. What did you find that you were? I mean, first of all, what was it like growing up in this area? So Sodermalm, for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of like a southern from the main part of the city. It's south, and it's kind of, what would you describe it as? A lot of people call it the hipster area now that it's been gentrified, but it would have been
Yeah.
different when you were growing up, right? It was a bit
Oh
rougher.
yeah, absolutely. It was hugely different. The Yeah, the area now is like the hipster area. It's where you can go and buy Italian pastries or
Yeah,
some kind of special type of German bread. There's something new,
yeah,
like, and craft. I don't know, craft beer and artisanal pizzas and
yeah,
stuff that people like. Like these things that they like. I
yes,
don't know. So it's very much like that now. It didn't used to be. It was like in the 70s. It was still very much a working class
yeah,
area. Of course, like there were like middle class people also,
yeah.
and to be honest, Swedish working class, urban working class, in the 70s and 80s was like, if you would compare that to, I guess, other Western countries, it
Mm,
was, we had it pretty good in Sweden
right.
compared,
Yeah.
but it was absolutely a different. It was a different vibe, and it was there were more. It was less streamlined.
Hmm.
It was less like, this is the way people look and dress and behave here. There were more lunatics in the street, and
For better or for worse, I suppose.
yeah. But I mean, it was
Hmm.
fascinating time as a kid to be here. And there were derelict buildings everywhere, and
Hmm.
there were these like remains of infrastructure that didn't exist anymore. So we used to have trams in Stockholm in the,
Right.
I guess, 20s and 30s, and up until the, I guess, 50s or something. They had trams that ran above ground before they built the subways. Uh, I'm not sure exactly when they stopped doing it, but there
Hmm.
were still tracks, in the asphalt. The steel tracks were still there,
Yeah.
and all of the switching yards and stuff were still up. You know,
Right.
they hadn't torn them down yet, and they were derelict, and there were these like shady businesses inside where, like used car dealers, and they just sold like old furniture and stuff, and
Yeah.
like weird, and also a place for homeless to sleep, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And there was one of these, like one just adjacent to where I grew up. I grew up in a very old building from the 1852,
Wow.
and just around the corner from there, it was this huge switching yard that was, it was like super dangerous as a kid to just walk, because there was like there was tetanus in there, like,
It was actually
uh,
alive. It was sentient.
yeah, exactly. So that's around Zinkensdamm, and if you look at that place right now, I mean, it's
Yeah.
pristine. It's so clean, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was different then. And there were buildings, like there would be one building, uh, one old, you know, nice turn of the century, very nice building that would be completely just like blown out more or less, and rent super cheap. The just like the house I grew up in from 1851 had recently been renovated to modern standards. So which meant radiators, running water, inside toilets. uh, Whereas
You're still
the
stuck
adjacent
with the
buildings,
bucket system.
yeah, yeah, no, the adjacent buildings, they had you had to go out into the yard to the hand cranked
What?
water pump,
Really?
and they had
Wow.
these you know, like the privy. You go out and in the, you know, little wood sheds that you sat on in the middle of winter, you know, and
What?
there were these like, so the people who lived there had lived there since they were young people.
Yeah.
Mostly it was like old weird ladies, you know, with tons of cats, and like this loud violent drunk who would throw out all this furniture on the sidewalk every Friday, you know. And that this band, like a hippie band, lived in there, and they play their hippie music, you know. Like,
Amazing.
this is all, it's a very different time.
Yeah, it sounds like I mean I'm starting to understand a little bit about where your storytelling comes from. Just it sounds like you were surrounded by characters, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely was. And I think that place and time was, for Sweden, it was very very
Mm,
special.
interesting. And yeah, I suppose over time those things change. Do you find that there's still pockets like that here in Stockholm, or do you think it's changed a lot?
Uh, it's changed a lot. I
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that you will find anything like that anymore in Stockholm. Maybe
Mm,
suburbs. There are suburbs that have their own life,
yeah.
and are very um, different from the rest
Yeah.
of society, I guess.
Yeah.
And but you only hear about them if you live there yourself, or if
Right.
you have a friend who lives there. They
Yeah.
can, you know, tell you what's going on, you know.
Mm,
But inside of central Stockholm, I don't see that anymore, I
yeah.
think.
What I want to kind of go back to your kind of move into writing, and you said tabletop games. This is actually an interesting. I was talking to Ola Lindholm. Do you know Ola? He used to be like a television presenter, and now he works as a producer now. But
Yeah, I don't know him, but I know
yeah,
of him. Yeah.
yeah. But it's interesting how there's kind of this like tabletop games, and in Sweden in particular, there seems to be like there a lot of people were playing them here, and it's still very much like we have Free League, who's that publisher here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, you grew up playing, and like was that pretty informative of your early creativity? Like, were you playing role playing games when you were a kid?
Yeah, absolutely. That was we didn't know it then,
Hmm.
because it was because of no internet and no communication. So we thought that we have this new unique thing, you know, like we're a little pocket of like some nerd kids in this school. We got this thing, you know, where we're
Yeah.
playing role playing games. It's a new thing, you know. But it turns out then when you grow up and you meet people from all over Sweden, everybody was doing the same thing,
Yeah.
you know, in their little boyhood homes,
Yeah.
whether it was in Södermalm, Stockholm, or if it was in Flen or
Yeah.
Umeå. Like everybody was doing it at the same time, and I guess everybody felt that they had their own private little kingdom,
Mm.
and that's what's so fucking cool about RPGs as well. I think
Yeah.
the fact that you have your own private little kingdom with your friends, and
Yeah. Your own
nothing
world.
can really touch you there.
Yeah.
But it's still one of the greatest. One of the greatest. I don't play RPGs anymore.
Dude, we
Uh,
should make it happen.
we should, because
Yeah.
I think it's still one of the greatest ways of you know, just like effortlessly be creative,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. There's no
for
pressure
your
on it,
own
right?
pleasure,
Yeah. There's no
only for
pressure.
your own pleasure.
Exactly, and it was kind of come up yesterday in the convention. It's like this space that you share in your mind. You're in your mind. You're all picturing something. It's like a psychic connection. It's like this.
Yeah,
It transcends our consciousness to this place where we're all united in the moment, and it has almost that spiritual effect. My question for you is, I have a lot of friends who also, Swedish friends, who said that they also did LARP. Did you also do LARP?
No, that's it's a pretty good story because it was just like this was the when when you were at a crossroads in life
Yeah.
and you choose one path. So this was like LARP came up. LARP started kind of happening when I was in. As far as I know, I mean, it was happening before, but
Yeah.
I got into contact with people who did it when I went to this gymnasium in Sweden. I don't know what that is, the equivalent.
It's like the high school. It's like the end of high school, the last 2
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
So I was there in gymnasium, and somebody says, have you heard about this thing? It's live action role playing, and we were still kind of nerdy, but we didn't play role playing games anymore much. But we were still into that kind. We were into Fantastic Worlds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So. But I had started to gravitate more towards like horror movies and punk rock, and rock and roll music and that kind of thing, and a little bit away from from fantasy and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but still, it was like, what? People are dressing up, and everybody's like in on it, and you're like, you can actually be a wandering cleric.
Yeah, I
with
feel
dark secrets.
I feel like it's so up your alley. I'm surprised you didn't do it.
And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I want to go, and I signed up for it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
For one of the big things that was going to happen, and then I was like, starting to think about how I was going to make my costume and stuff, and then there was the Roskilde Festival, and this was the first time do you know about the Roskilde Festival?
No.
It's a huge thing. It's like it's weird to say it's like the Scandinavian Woodstock, but it really kind of was.
Okay.
And it was going on since, like, it was a hippie thing from the beginning. Started in the 70s, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. So it's like it happens in Roskilde, Denmark, and it's a huge thing. And like the biggest act, like the biggest rock and roll and every type of music acts come there, play. Thousands of people come, and that thing, I had been sort of I'd been wanting to go to that festival for but I was too young, and then this was the first time I had the opportunity to go there.
Right.
I had saved up the money to do it, and I realized it was the same time as this live, as they call it. So I'm like, okay, this is where I choose clearly the nerds or the rockers.
Yeah.
And then I chose the rockers, and I kind of maintained I stayed on that path, with the music and the rock and roll and all that hardcore punk and that stuff.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about that. I've been seeing you've been posting, you've been doing shows again, which is awesome. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that part of your life.
Yeah. Okay. I grew up interested in music. That was like my other, like, I was the nerdy kid with the Judge Dredd and all that, and then I was like a rock and roll kid as well. I was like as a kid, like into David Bowie and the Rolling Stones and stuff like that, and then I got a little bit older and I got into Sex Pistols and Ramones and the Cramps, and so I had that was my other life, so to speak, as my other inner life. Can you say that even? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was really big for me. It was really, really, and I was fortunate enough to. My father was really into music and stuff, and he kind of showed me stuff that I really, really liked, and that I still like, and we share that, and we still share. I don't know. He introduced me to, when I was like 10 years old. He introduced me to the Pogues when their first album came out, Red Roses for Me.
Wow.
And he introduced me to, well, of course, the Rolling Stones and David Bowie and stuff like that. But also stuff like the Specials and New York Dolls, and so I had a lot. Just like, I had been introduced to so much cool stuff already.
Yeah.
That it was easy to continue taking in cool stuff.
How did your dad get into that? I mean, Was it readily
It's
available,
this.
or he just sought it out? Like, did he have a connection? Was he a musician, or?
No, yeah, kind of. He had a
Mm.
band. He had a band in the '80s, and I remember going with him to the rehearsal or their rehearsal space and stuff like that, which was a big adventure. It was in Gamla Stan,
Oh wow.
uh, and Gamla Stan back then was also very different to what it is now. So there
Right.
were all these sort of all these kind of basements and cellars, like medieval basements and cellars
Yeah.
that were you could rent for fucking cheap, you know. But
Not
they were
not
dank.
anymore.
Not anymore, man. But back then it was like, but they were like dank and they didn't have running water and like the same
Yeah.
story. But you can rent them for really cheap and
Wow.
you have your band and stuff like that there without breaking the bank,
Yeah.
which is a big reason why there could be these punk bands and stuff rehearsing in these kind of urban environments. Like that's not going to happen anymore. You have to be
No.
either rich or out in the suburb to do it to have a rehearsal room.
Yeah.
You're not going to find a rehearsal room in central Stockholm anymore for anywhere near cheap. I
Yeah.
guess you might, but I know it's hard.
Yeah. So what?
So yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
that's I kind of grew up with that. And that the music and that and going with my father to his rehearsal space and stuff. So I was really I felt that was a cool thing to do.
Mm.
I always wanted to be in a band. So even as a kid, we had some bands together, like other guys in our class. When we were like
Yeah.
10, we had a band, but one guy he wanted to play blues guitar, and I was a punk rocker. I wanted to play punk, and I just played the drums, and the other guy was just like, you figure it out. I'll just play the guitar over here. It's like we didn't have a really strong, solid foundation of what we want
Right.
to do, but we like to play music. But then I wanted to sing. So when I
Mm.
was in the gymnasium, then again, I realized that I would like to be a singer. And then this guy, I would always wear these like Ramones t-shirts. And this is when is this, like 91 or something
Okay.
like that. So it was not common to do that. They weren't a hip thing. Ramones or any of those things weren't really in at the
Mm.
time. So this really surly Polish guy who's like 1 year older than me comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, you look like a hippie, but you wear a Ramon t-shirt." I'm like, "Yeah. Do you want to sing in my band?"
Really?
Like, yeah, like, yeah, yeah. He's like, "Okay, let's get in touch. Goodbye." And
So
then,
random.
it took like nothing happened. And then it was like a year or so. And I was like kind of waiting for the call to go and rehearse those cool guys,
Yeah.
his band.
Yeah.
And then it was a show in Stockholm then. I remember the year was probably 92, I guess. There was the Ramones, Iggy Pop, and Swedish luminaries, the Nomads,
Okay.
uh, who I didn't know them then, but they're good friends of mine now.
Oh, nice.
They're like the Swedish garage kings. Like
Yeah.
that's what they are. Really. They're really, really good band. If you should check it out if you want to
No
hear
man.
some cool garage songs. And they were playing. It was a huge show, but I went there alone because I had no friends who wanted to go. Nobody was interested in this kind of music, so I was just standing there, outside with this kind of McDonald's, straw, drinking that. And I was like really cold because my jeans were torn and I had
Yeah.
my Ramones t-shirt and my leather jacket. But then some guys were pointing at me. I'm like, who are those guys? And then somebody's like, that's gonna be the singer, man. That fucking asshole over there is gonna be the singer. And that was the band
Nice.
that this Polish guy's band. And they came over and like, hey, it's you talked about you. Can you sing? It's like, yeah, I guess. You guess when can you sing or not? And then it's like I swapped telephone numbers with the bass
Yeah.
player who's like the guy who makes stuff happen.
Yeah. Okay.
And he called me up the next Friday. It's like, do you want to come and rehearse? And I couldn't sing for shit. I got to be honest.
Well,
I think they just felt sorry for me, so they
it's
let me stay on
so
for a
wild
while.
that you got the job without even auditioning, and it's not even just like, do you want to be an extra in a movie? It's like, do you want to be the lead for our band? It's such a strange story.
It is weird, and I couldn't sing, man. And they were like, "Yeah, I guess you can stay in a way because you're kind of fun." And you know, they were a couple of years older than me, so they're like, "And we like to teach you to drink."
Okay.
So they kind of taught me how to drink a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we just became very tight. And then I became a good singer, and I stuck with it. I developed a voice, I guess, and then. So now I can sing punk rock. And that band, then 15 years ago, we just stopped playing.
Yeah.
We had released a few albums and stuff, and you know, done. But we realized it was just not going anywhere, and it just felt like we had other things to do for a
Yeah.
while. But I was always in other bands as well. I've always been like a several band type guy.
Yeah.
But then we just realized, like, okay, the guys who have kids, their kids are grown us, we don't really have any other things. Should we just play a couple of shows and see what happens, you know? And then we decided to do that, and it was really really fun.
Awesome.
But dude, I got to tell you, going back to playing like a half an hour, a 40-minute set of like super fast punk rock and hardcore, uh, and with no breaks in between songs,
Right.
40 minutes straight. That I didn't realize how hard that was when I was a young man, because I had a different type of physiology then. Right to these days, I just have to, you know, I have to stay in shape to be able to do that. You
Yeah.
know?
So is punk music, I mean, for you, what's the story in not just your voice of punk rock, like your writing and the story you want to convey in that, but like what element of like what is Swedish punk rock about in general? Like what is the message?
Well, the message, Swedish punk rock is usually political.
Yeah.
It's in the 70s. It really became almost like an extension of an earlier kind of political music scene. It was called prog rock, but it's not progressive rock as you know it.
Yeah.
It's not like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but
Yeah.
it's more like protest singers, you know. But they
Yeah.
were like usually based on some kind of heavy blues rock,
Okay.
and then there would be political message, left wing political messages in that music, and
Man.
it could be good and it could be bad. Some of the bands were really cool. Some of them were just too political and too boring to be able to exist. But the punk rock music, like when it started in Sweden, I wasn't there. Because I was only 4 years old or something in '77. 4 years old, yeah.
You got there.
Um, so I like it was embraced by Swedish kids, and then there were like the bands that got big were mostly politically oriented,
Yeah.
and they had a political message, and that was cool. And then there were some other bands who were like, no, punk is about it's more of an art form, kind of. It's more of they didn't think about it. They said let's kill every fucking artist. I hate everyone, including myself. I just want to destroy and see what happens. Dadaism, you know, like it felt like that, you know.
Yeah, it's like
but
nihilism.
it was
Yeah.
fake. It was nihilism. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't believe in anything. You know?
Right. Nihilist man.
Yeah. And then those were the types of. But the thing that remained was the sort of the political side. So I always listened to, when I was a kid, I listened to the Sex Pistols, British stuff, and so on and so forth. And when I was a kid, I was into that political stuff. And then I got a little older, maybe when I was like 13 years old or something, I got into the Ramones, and that kind of the American punk rock, which is it's a lot different, and it doesn't really have that political side to it in the same way. So when we started doing the Robots, then my band, it was clear that we're not going to touch politics at all. First of all, because we just differed. We had different worldviews, all of
Yeah.
us,
Okay.
and we couldn't really get behind any political things, because yeah, okay, I'm a Swedish guy from Södermalm. It's not going to be a huge for you. It's not going to be a huge surprise that I'm a socialist. Like I'm a left wing dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not everybody in this band was,
Right.
and so I can't go like you know. We want 8-hour work days in our punk band. You know what I mean? It's not going to work. So we
Yeah.
just sung about fucking weird shit instead.
Yeah.
And so that kind of became the tonality of that band. Like we just did a lot of songs about other stuff. And
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like the album artwork. There's definitely kind of like a vibe. You know what it kind of reminds me of? I know the music's not the same, but kind of just the vibe, like the aesthetic that. Have you ever heard of Man or Astro Man?
oh yeah, absolutely,
But
yeah,
it's just like it kind of you kind of have yours is more kind of like a movie monster kind of thing. They do the
yeah.
side, that's kind of the vibe that I got when I saw
No,
it.
it's not the same kind of music, but I
No,
think that we have absolutely there's a similar aesthetic to it.
yeah, yeah,
And a
it has similar
similar
vibe.
mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then too, like just seeing like the stuff you draw when we were working together at the office and stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
you definitely love. It feels like you love those kind of '60s kind of that monster stuff. That
Yeah,
seems like right up your alley.
absolutely.
What kind of so in beyond the music? I mean, I think I heard Christopher saying you're working on a comic book. Is that true?
Um,
Or you're working on something? You're writing?
yeah, I think I was at the time.
Yeah.
I was working on a thing that was going to be a comic book for kids, but a post-apocalyptic comic book for kids. It was going to be, and it was going to be about kids surviving in a post-apocalyptic Stockholm. So,
Ah, okay.
uh, but it never came to fruition. I had worked on it for a while, but it fell through with the contract that I had, or I
Mm,
didn't have a contract, and we were. So I still have all these ideas, and I still want to do it, but it's I guess it's just in cataloged right now.
right.
You know,
Right.
the idea.
Do you have because you've written a novel too, right? That's actually been
Yeah,
published. Yeah. Is that something that I mean? I know you work for a game studio now, but is that something you want to pursue? In the next few
yeah,
years, kind of your own books and your own like comic projects.
absolutely. That I really do. I want to write more novels. I have
Hmm.
like we have two. I've got two novels published. One of them is available still. The other one is just like out of print.
Okay.
And they're both really weird, and they take place in Stockholm, and they're about dark subject matter. they're about
It's,
they're about insanity and mind control and psychopaths and
hmm.
violence and it's just pretty horrible stuff. Really, I don't know why I gravitate towards that, but I do, and I like writing those things, and I want to do more, but it's just not. It's not been a time, but I feel it's kind of growing inside me that I want to do it
Yeah.
again.
I
Um,
feel a lot of people, I'm 45 this year, and I feel a lot of guys that I came up with in comics are, we're all feeling the same. There's like we're all feeling the call, to come back
yeah,
and do our own thing. I think maybe it's just the age, or maybe or maybe it's we look into the culture and we see like maybe the quality isn't there, and maybe we're like maybe I can do better. I don't know what it is, but I'm talking to a lot of people and they have that same feeling right now. I think it's time to
yeah,
do my thing that I've been thinking about.
yeah. But you're doing it though. I mean, you're
Well,
you're
yeah.
still you're just like constantly churning out great stuff.
Well, it's like I think it's one of those things that I put it away for a couple of years. I mean, I took a full break from doing my own stuff for 4 years, and when I talked a lot about my career before, which was like you were turning out a comic a month. You were used to every month you had something finished, and then to go into the games industry, it's no knock on it. It's just not for me, but to not have anything produced in 4 years, you're like, I got to get back to making something.
Yeah,
I just
no,
don't have the
I
patience.
hear you. It's a frustrating ride, man.
Yeah.
Until you see things come into fruition
Yeah.
in the video game business, and usually when it finally hits the shelves, you're so sick and tired of it that you don't want to play it even.
Okay, well,
Like,
actually, I have a question for you because I feel like so you wrote were you the lead writer? Did you have a team on Mad Max the video game?
no, it was just me.
Just you,
And it was me and we had a script doctor that worked out of Hollywood. The name
right?
escapes me right now, and I feel shitty about that. But who was good. And
Yeah.
then, but I wrote, yeah, I wrote it.
So
But
did you play that game
of course,
after?
no, I haven't played it. It's the best game I worked on, and I'm so
Yeah.
proud of it. And it feels like it's one of my greatest accomplishments in life. I haven't played that game.
Wow.
That's so weird.
That is
I
really
mean,
weird.
it's because if I record an album, I'll listen to it. And I'm like, yeah, that came out good, or that wasn't good.
Why do you
I
think that
should have
is?
done better. I have no idea. I think it's just like you said. It takes 4 or 5 years,
Hmm.
and it's like most of the time those years, it's not happy collaborating.
Right.
It's usually not really a creative good time. It's
Right.
usually eliminating obstacles and finding ways around really severe problems
Yeah.
and finding creative solutions to technical problems or financial problems or fiscal fucking problems, and those things. Like after you're done with it after 5 years, you're so sick and tired of the entire process that you don't want to see it again. Whereas, like writing a book, you wrote it and then you rewrite it and you write it again, and then it
Yeah.
gets sent to the press, and finally you get a book, and it's the greatest accomplishment. You can open it anywhere, and it's like it's a real book, and it's my words inside. It's cool. You want to hang out with that thing, but recording an album is the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
you're in the studio and you're singing and you're having a good time, and then goes away to the presses and comes back, and it's back in those days, a real CD or vinyl record, and you feel a sense of accomplishment, and you listen
Yeah.
to it, and you're like, yeah, that came out more or less good or whatever. But the video games, it's just like it feels like you're going to see all the glaring shit that
Right.
nobody else is going to notice, but you will.
Yeah, and it's I know when we've talked too, you kind of talked about how you're kind of on your own a little bit too, like because especially with Mad Max, like you were the only writer. That's wild. Like
Yeah,
it's like when at least when we got to work together, it was me, you, and Lonnie. We just got to hang out, and I
yeah,
mean that's the fun stuff, right? Where we just get to create and especially when like I feel like you and I have such a good chemistry creatively, like
yeah,
you have like such crazy wild ideas that are so inspiring, and then I take them and I try to patch them together, and that process was so
yeah,
fun. That's the stuff that I feel like the games industry really needs to learn how to embrace that a little bit more, and just be like,
yeah,
let's put Odd in the room with like one of the artists and one of the designers, and just let them and like kind of embrace that a bit more, especially in the early stages when you're trying to kind of create this creative language that everyone's going to
yeah.
be using in the
No,
years to
absolutely,
come.
and that's the way it works the best. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way it has been down. Like for me, it's always been development process of video games. Like the most commonly used tool in creating the really cool shit is the humble whiteboard. Like
Yeah.
that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
You're in a room and you draw something that if somebody else looks at it that wasn't in the room while you were talking and drawing, they're just gonna think somebody escaped from an insane asylum and just scribbled something there. But if everybody in the room while they're talking and drawing understands exactly what's there,
Yeah.
and the whiteboard sessions for me are like those are like that's where the magic absolutely happens to me. A collaborative effort of different minds, different mindsets, and also everybody has their own opinions and ways of solving stuff, and everybody can raise also if there's more than one discipline involved,
Mm.
everybody can raise uh, concerns about whether or not it's possible to do it because of so and so and so.
Right.
You know, so it's that to me is like that's the holy place.
Yeah,
To me.
yeah. Well, and that magic too, where it's so nice when you can have like a room full of people that they're there to share their ideas, but then go like, "Oh, I know Odd is going to take this in a way funnier or way darker place," and to like just have the humility to say like, "I want this idea to go out and then come back better." And when you can get that cool vibe where it's everyone's working together to make that story or that concept better, it's like yeah, it's a cool magic. I love when that can happen. We can meet the right people. I feel like you should write a comic book, man. I feel like
Dude, I really want to. It's one of my kind of, I guess it's a bucket list item if you use that
yeah,
terminology. But to me, it's like it's daunting because it's I would say that it's the medium that I respect the most
hmm,
is comic books.
yeah.
That's it's a little bit of a like uh, do I dare do I dare to do it? You know, like can I really go in here? It's like,
Yeah.
or am I going to get burned to death by
Well,
you know? It's like
that's always a possibility in the comic book industry.
yeah. So it's like yeah, but it's one of the things that I really want to do that I haven't done. You
Yeah.
know, I've tried my hand at it, but I've never seen it, never seen anything published really.
Well, I wonder if like I'd love to introduce you to some artists because well, the thing that you're talking about that I think one of the misconception or not a misconception, it does happen quite often, but like you kind of write a script and then you go, oh, maybe this guy would like to draw it for me. But I find, at least in my experience, and also having worked alongside you, that like you really like that. It is like being in a band. The
Yeah,
similarities are like I bring it up all the time. It's like it really is. It's when you come in as equal partners and you both have a similar vibe. You like the same things. Then that comic book becomes like this pairing of two people, which it should be, unless it's a writer
yeah,
artist who does it themselves. But it really is like what the writer loves, what the artist loves, and then you guys just kind of talk and make it together.
yeah,
I think it'd be interesting just to sit you in a room with somebody who likes that stuff, that the same kind of vibe, and the the dark comedy. That's kind of where I feel like the sinister dark comedy. I feel like that's kind of where your head is a little bit. But yeah,
yeah.
I think
No,
it'd be
you're
interesting to read.
correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. Hey, I got to ask you. You mentioned being in a band, and I've seen pictures of you playing the drums.
Yep.
Is that a thing? Like,
Yeah, I was in a band. We weren't very good.
right?
I was the drummer. What were we called? I can't even remember what we're called now.
Really?
Gray something. Oh, it was funny because it was like me and a guy I did comics with, Tyler, and then our friend Ryan. But like me and Tyler were both 40 in our early 40s, and we had kids. And so the joke was, the name I remember the band being was Dad Bod, but that wasn't the actual name of the band. That's because that's what the wives called it.
It's a
Dad.
really good band name, though.
It's a great.
I mean,
We should have gone with it because I think we took ourselves a little too seriously. But yeah, I played music my whole life.
yeah.
I grew up. My family's very. I come from a conservative Christian home, and I mean Christians are always singing, right? They sing all the time. They're singing at
Oh,
church
yeah.
or singing at home, and also my family, even though like I'm not really that, but it was a Mennonite family, which probably doesn't mean anything, but.
I know what it is. Yeah,
I mean, you would know what it is, of course,
for
but
sure.
yes, but they're very musical. Like they, I remember growing up being really young, and it didn't matter who it was, aunts, uncles, grandparents, grandkids, when they would sing, everyone knew the harmonies and like a cappella. It was always
Yeah.
amazing music around me. And my dad's is an accomplished piano player, and it was just around me all the time. So
Oh, yeah.
I grew up with it, and I played guitar in high school and stuff like that. I was in a I was in a band called Gargamel Jones. I feel like you would like that name for some reason.
What was the name again?
Gargamel Jones. I don't.
Gargamel as the Smurfs wizard, like that guy.
Yeah,
That's a really cool name, man.
yeah. I thought you'd like that. But yeah, I mean,
Or is he? Is he a wizard though? No, he's just like a. Is he a scientist?
he's like an alchemist. I think he's always brewing
An
potions.
alchemist.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
his
he's an alchemist.
with his cat Azrael, which is like a demon's
Yeah,
name, is it not?
it's really cool. Azrael, the angel of death.
It's a wild. Is it Belgian Smurfs?
I guess. Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
like
they
it
are.
is. So weird.
Most of the best, like the best kids comics from that, like from the 60s, 70s, they came
Yeah.
from Belgium.
Were you a Tintin fan? Because there's that shop here in
Yeah,
Gamla that has it's all Tintin. It's a beautiful shop.
yeah. No, I was a fan of that. I really was a fan of Tintin, but I was gravitating more towards Spirou, if you're familiar with that.
I know the name. Why?
Uh, and it's about this. It's a similar type of guy. He's not a journalist. He's just a guy who gets involved and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
But the weird thing about him is that he always wears this kind of bellboy costume. So he's a grown man, uh, and he has a friend who's a journalist in Sweden. He was called Nicke. I don't know what his name is in Belgium.
Okay.
And then they had this weird marsupial cat, Marsupilami, which had this. It was like a dotted monkey, like a yellow and black dotted monkey
Yeah. Okay.
with a super long tail.
Yeah, I think I've seen. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a monkey, but it's a marsupial
Some
monkey.
creature. Yeah. Yeah.
It's some kind of creature,
Yeah.
and and also they had a squirrel, uh, and then some other characters that were like reoccurring, and they were best friends with an old scientist called Baron or the Count of Champignac, and he was the count of the small little village, quaint village in Belgium. Memory lane.
And it was a kid's comic.
It was a kid's comic, but it when you read it now, you see it was pretty clever. When you look back at it, it's like they had a lot of cool.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of social commentary in there. Again, around, especially if I remember correctly, around the phenomenon of banana republics and those kinds of things.
Really?
And also a lot of the things about former Nazis. Like there was a vibe in that comic
Interesting.
about these sort of surviving elements of European Nazism ending up in South America and stuff like that. And that
Really?
it was quite cleverly hidden, but it was there.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny that the stuff that you look back when you read when you were a kid, you miss all of the context.
Yeah.
and it's cool when you can find stuff that as you age through each generation, 20, 30, 40, you see it differently. Like I feel that way. This is kind of off topic, but I feel like Princess Bride is that movie. Princess Bride starts as it's like the fun adventure movie with big giant and then when you get to be a teenager, it's about the romance, and then you're in your 20s and it's about kind of like the kind of the humor, and then you get older and it's like it's actually like all this kind of geopolitical humor as well, and it's like it just kind of it hits at these different things, and I love that. I love fiction.
When it hits the strides of your life.
Yeah.
And there's a place for every part of your becoming an adult kind of thing.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's very true. Some movies are like that. I want to say, when I was a kid, when you're like 5 and you're watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's all about the fun.
That was your growing up, was it?
And then when you're like 10, you start understanding like you say, the geopolitical aspects.
Right.
And then when you're 15, it's all about the romance.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, I didn't watch that film when I was 5.
I was going to say that would also explain a lot, actually. All right, man, dude. That the hour has come and gone.
Oh wow,
dude,
fast,
dude, so fast, man. But I'm just going to say it on the air. We can talk a bit after too, but. Yeah, we got to hang out. Let's go meet up at Shannon's studio
let's do that. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
Hey, what's that thing in the background? Is that like a skeleton? An animated skeleton?
Well, so like here, if you see, there's like there's a bright light.
Yeah.
So I covered it up with the.
I see.
With Mörk Borg. Dark Castle, as you know, in Swedish.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this?
No,
It's so,
but I
dude,
love it.
these
I
guys,
don't even
dude,
know what it is.
these guys are a Stockholm-based conglomerate. So they publish through Free League, who are doing amazing role-playing game stuff right now.
Yeah,
But they're
yeah.
called the Stockholm Cartel.
All right. Okay. Cool.
And they're doing a bunch of like open sourcing it. They're letting people. They put out kickstarted a metal album that was inspired by the kind of the aesthetics and vibe of this role playing game. That's what this is a role playing
That's
game.
so cool.
So yeah, I think
And
you'll
I
dig it.
love like that's one of my things. Like one of the you have your childhood favorite things. You have like I said, Frankenstein and the Mummy,
Right.
animated skeletons with swords and shields. That was
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
my
That
like.
was your jam.
Oh, I go crazy for it. And I remember seeing it. They would show those Ray Harryhausen movies on TV.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
in when you had uh, sportlov in Sweden. I don't know what that is, and
I think
uh,
it's just spring break. I
spring
not.
break or something like
Yeah.
that. But and they would show these things in the afternoons, they're like old '60s weird
Oh,
movies.
that's
That
awesome.
was, and I remember them showing the Ray Harryhausen movies and the skeleton fight from Jason and the Argonauts. I was like, I wanted to become a skeleton myself almost.
That's the dream. That's the dream. When you get there, you can retire, man. You've done
Yeah.
it. All right, man. We'll hop off. We can chat a bit after, but thanks so much for
Yeah,
doing this,
yeah.
man. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, man.
let's
Thank you
chat
for
again soon.
listening to this weird stuff.
No, man, it was a good time. All right.